Good evening, my friends. So, you want to learn to speak and understand English. You have had a long day. You are tired. Lay down in your bed, close your heavy eyes, and let's listen to a story while we slowly fall into the arms of the English language.
Pinocchio Story. Many years ago, in a small town, lived a kind old carpenter named Geppetto. Geppetto lovingly crafted beautiful wooden toys for children and adored his work. However, he was very lonely and decided to make a wooden puppet for himself. With great care and affection, Geppetto spent several days crafting the puppet and finally finished it. Feeling less lonely, he decided to name his puppet. After some thought, he named it Pinocchio. That night, Geppetto fell asleep gazing at Pinocchio, wishing he were a real boy he could hug and feel the warmth of his body. Just then, the kind fairy of the story, who had heard Geppetto's wish, appeared in his workshop. She looked at Pinocchio, took her magic wand, recited a spell, and pointed it at Pinocchio. Suddenly, Pinocchio came to life, able to walk and talk. Pinocchio thanked the kind fairy and hugged her. The fairy told Pinocchio that if he wanted to become a real boy forever, he must be brave and honest and treat his father Geppetto kindly. The next morning, when Geppetto woke up, he saw Pinocchio moving. He stared at him in disbelief, as if he were dreaming. Seeing his father awake and staring at him in surprise, Pinocchio cleared his throat and said, "Father, the kind fairy heard your wish and gave me life. She said I must be brave, honest, and kind to you to become a real boy forever." Geppetto, still thinking he was dreaming, walked towards Pinocchio and hugged him. He was overjoyed that his wish had come true. Geppetto and Pinocchio talked, went out, and spent happy times together. After a while, Geppetto told Pinocchio, "You must go to school and study. To become a real boy, you need an education." But Pinocchio hated studying and loved playing. Not wanting to lose Pinocchio, Geppetto decided to force him to go to school. But Pinocchio realized this and ran away from his father. Geppetto chased after him, but Pinocchio was faster and easily escaped. Pinocchio entered a bakery. The smell of fresh bread intoxicated him, but as he tried to escape, he bumped into the bread baskets, and all the bread fell to the ground. The baker, very angry, called the police. Geppetto arrived at the bakery and was arrested and imprisoned in place of Pinocchio. Pinocchio, no longer forced to go to school, was very happy. He played outside until night. It was cold and rainy. When Pinocchio returned home, Geppetto had not yet arrived. Pinocchio was tired and wet. He was cold. He lay down by the heater and fell into a deep sleep. Pinocchio's wooden feet began to burn, but he didn't notice. Gradually, his feet completely burned and disappeared. At midnight, Geppetto was released from prison and returned home. When he arrived home, he saw that Pinocchio's feet were burnt, and he was crying. Geppetto hugged Pinocchio and said, "Don't worry, I'll make you new feet." Geppetto stayed awake and worked until morning to make new feet for Pinocchio. In the morning, the new feet were ready. Pinocchio was very happy to see his feet, hugged his father tightly, and promised to be a good boy and go to school from tomorrow. Geppetto, happy that Pinocchio wanted to go to school, went to the bookstore and bought an alphabet book. Pinocchio was very happy to see the book and eager to go to school. The next morning, Pinocchio took his book and headed for school. Near the school, a sound caught his attention. Near the school, there was a circus with a puppet show. Pinocchio forgot his promise, sold his alphabet book, and bought a circus ticket with the money. When Pinocchio saw the wooden puppets playing on a stage, he went on stage too, but the puppet strings got tangled and the show was ruined. The audience laughed at the sight. The circus owner was very angry and wanted to throw Pinocchio into the fire, but when Pinocchio told him the story, he was heartbroken and let him go, giving him 5 gold coins to buy another book for himself. Pinocchio went home smiling and happy, really wanting to buy an alphabet book for himself and go to school. But on the way, the cat and the fox saw him and planned to take his coins. They told Pinocchio that if he planted his coins by the miracle tree in the forest, a coin tree would grow, and he would become rich. They showed him the miracle tree. Pinocchio followed them, buried his money, and fell asleep there. But when he woke up, he saw that he was hanging from the tree. The cat and the fox had dug up the ground, taken the coins, then tied up Pinocchio and fled. The kind fairy, who was always watching over Pinocchio, sent a falcon to save him. Poor Pinocchio, who had been hanging from the tree for several hours in the cold air, had become ill. The kind fairy put him to bed and brought him medicine. Pinocchio asked if the medicine was bitter. The fairy replied yes, but he had to take it to get better. But Pinocchio said, "I don't like to take bitter medicine." The fairy said, "If you don't take it, you'll die." Then she clapped her hands, and 4 rabbits came with a coffin. Pinocchio, very scared, said, "No matter how bitter it is, I'll take the medicine." When Pinocchio got better, the kind fairy asked him, "Why didn't you go to school? What happened to the alphabet book?" Pinocchio said, "I was going to school when I saw a poor child. I sold my book to buy him food." As Pinocchio spoke, his nose grew longer and longer. Pinocchio was scared and said, "Oh, my nose, why is my nose long?" The fairy said, "Because you lied." When Pinocchio promised not to lie again, the kind fairy asked the woodcutter to fix Pinocchio's nose. Pinocchio said goodbye to the kind fairy and went home, but on the way, he came across a carriage going to the amusement park. Pinocchio forgot everything, got on the carriage, and went to the amusement park with the other children. The children played in the amusement park every day, and Pinocchio was so entertained that he decided to stay there forever. But after a while, he noticed that his ears had changed, and he had a tail. All the children gradually turned into donkeys. Pinocchio wanted to go home, but it was too late. The carriage owner sold all the children to a circus. The circus owner was a cruel and greedy man. He forced them to perform dangerous shows every day. One day, Pinocchio fell and broke his leg while jumping through a ring of fire. The circus owner was angry and ordered him to be thrown into the sea. Pinocchio was thrown into the sea. The fish gathered around him and bit him. Gradually, the donkey's skin tore and Pinocchio came out. He was very happy to return to his original form. Suddenly, a giant whale approached Pinocchio from behind and swallowed him. Inside the whale's belly was very dark, but when Pinocchio looked closer, he noticed a light at the bottom of the whale's belly. He swam towards the light and was very happy to see Geppetto in the whale's belly. They hugged each other. Geppetto said that when he didn't come home that day, he was worried about him and came to the sea to find him, but the whale swallowed him. Pinocchio, regretting his actions, apologized to Geppetto. They waited for the whale to open its mouth and then escaped. Pinocchio, being made of wood and unable to sink, put Geppetto on his back and swam until they finally reached the shore. Pinocchio took old Geppetto home and took care of him. Every day he cooked healthy food for his father to make Geppetto feel better. When Geppetto got better and was able to get out of bed, the kind fairy appeared and said to Pinocchio, "You have shown that you deserve to be a real boy." Then, by waving her magic wand, she turned Pinocchio into a real boy. Geppetto's wish came true, and he lived happily ever after with his son,